What's up, everyone? Welcome to Back to the Future, the podcast that takes a trip down Philly sports memory lane and asks the question, what if? Well, I feel like I should be leading off with Dearly Beloved. We are gathered here today to say goodbye to the 2022 Eagles season. It's all over. Hopefully, your week has been a lot better than mine. I will be honest, I did not cry after the game. However, I've not been this devastated in a loss in a long time. It's like a gut punch, and I've been through my fair share of losses. So this one has, I don't remember feeling like this after any loss for any team, but specifically the Eagles. I don't even know. I don't even know if some of those NFC Championship games in the early 2000 or the yeah, I guess it would have been the early 2000s hit as hard as this one. But, I mean, they were in it. And, I mean, I don't necessarily want to spend a whole lot of time recapping this because we've seen it. I've done a lot of it this week on This Day in Philly Sports History. But when you have a 10-point lead going into the fourth quarter, you're expecting to win. I mean, take your pick. There's so many plays that could have gone the other way. It's whatever. I just don't know. And like I said, I don't want to get into the X's and O's because we saw what happened. The defense couldn't do shit in the fourth quarter when it mattered. Second half, for that matter. The offense did what it had to do, but there was a point. I mean, we talked about it on earlier this week on This Day in Philly Sports History, and A.J. Brown said when they kicked that field goal to make it 27-21, I think it was. It just was like, we should have went for it. And, I mean, if you go back to Super Bowl 52, the key play was Doug Peterson almost anticipating that Tom Brady was going to come out and play like Tom Brady. I feel like Sirianni could have maybe predicted and thought, hey, this is Patrick Mahomes. He's going to come out and play. We got to keep the pedal to the metal. And, I mean, in Super Bowl 52, the Philly special was a ballsy fourth down call. And then there was the fourth down call when the Patriots had just taken the lead when he threw the 2-yard pass to Zach Ertz. And I just feel like you've been aggressive all year. And I mean, don't get me wrong, that is not the only reason why the Eagles lost the Super Bowl. But it's just, I don't know. Like I said, Jalen Hurts' fumble. The defense not stopping, giving up a punt return, which I think of all phases of this team, that's the one that they need to correct and fix the most. If we're being brutally honest, I mean, I saw some people sticking up for Britt Covey, and yeah, I mean, I guess he didn't have that bad of a season yardage wise on punts, but I feel like every time it was either a fair catch or boom, he's running into the line. Our coverage units weren't that good, so special teams, I think, is really what needs a lot of attention. And I mean, obviously you're going to have to replace both coordinators. It's going to be an interesting offseason. Now, the future's bright. They're in a decent position. However, doesn't take the sting from this loss. And in thinking about it this week and in trying to prep for this podcast, I really, truly, in my heart, believed I was going to be not really doing a podcast this week. I thought I was going to be doing a couple live feeds, a couple live hits from the parade today with the kids. And I mean, shit. I mean, the weather, it's 60 degrees. It would have been a perfect day for a parade. And I mean, I'll be completely honest, and maybe I should have known better. I don't know, but I really thought that's where we were going to be today. So it's definitely painful and it stings. And I mean, we talked about the whole. We did a lot with the Phillies on this, as well as This Day in Philly Sports History, and I didn't realize it, and I'm sure you've heard this stat now. It's 90. First of all, we've lost 3 straight championships if you count the MLS, which it is what it is. But I mean, even if you take the MLS out, we have lost the last 4 major sports championships in a row. And some people will count the soccer. So I mean, the last 3, and if soccer's not up there. I mean, it's got to be fifth. I mean, NASCAR probably is bigger than a lot of the other sports, but team sports, the five major, I mean, we've lost the past three, and we did it in 99 days. So think about that. 3 championship losses within the span of 100 days, 3 straight major championships, and I don't know which ends first, whether the NHL or the NBA ends first, but there is a slight outside possibility, depending on what the Sixers and Doc Rivers do, we could lose 4 straight championships. Now, I mean, that's a big get, but looks like the Sixers are going to be locked into a 3 or 4 seed. You never know. I've talked a lot about when that team is on, when Joe and James and Tyrese are on and you got Toby hitting shots, they're almost unbeatable. So it's not like they can't get hot and do it. So, I mean, I don't know if I could handle or survive if they lost 4 straight. But, I mean, and like I said, I expected to be doing a Super Bowl recap, more of a celebratory tone. So this week was going to be different no matter what. Going into it now with a loss, it's totally going to be different. And there's no what if this week. And, like, we're on episode 30 now. And even when I've done the preview for college basketball, the World Series, the NFL, NBA, all of that stuff, I've always tried to incorporate a what if. And, I mean, there's no what if today. I mean, obviously, what if they had won? The vibe would be different today. I mean, we're still in mourning, and the one thing I kind of want to address, and don't worry, this isn't going to be me ranting for 30, 40 minutes about the Eagles season. I do have a point to this, so bear with me. But I do have to get this out. Everybody mourns in different ways. However, if I see one more person right now, whether it's on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, the newspaper, the news, for Christ's sake, say, oh, well, they had a good season. They kind of overachieved. We didn't expect. Fuck that. I'm not in the market. I'm not in the business of moral victories. I don't want a moral victory because the truth of the matter is, yeah, I went over it last week. If you look at what the expectations were going on into this season, I said their ceiling was 12 games max. Well, they broke through that ceiling. They were the best team, and I know they didn't win the Super Bowl, so they don't have the trophy to prove it, but I don't care what anybody says. They were the best team all year. So you go in as the number 1 seed, all of a sudden you go into the Super Bowl as a favorite, and then you're going to tell me, well, they had a good season and they overachieved. No. Like, your expectations need to change. And yeah, if you'd have told me back in August, you're going to go to the Super Bowl and lose, I would have taken that at that time. However, shit changes. Just like when we talked about with the Phillies during the World Series. Yeah, the Phillies overachieved. The Phillies, if it wasn't for the expansion of the wild card last year, wouldn't have gotten in the playoffs. But they did. And they made a run to the World Series, and they were up in the World Series. So, yeah, my expectations changed a lot. So don't give me the moral victories. Maybe in 6 months, I'll be there, but I don't even know. I'm still pissed, and spring training is now starting for the Phillies this week, and I'm still pissed that they lost. And I was reading some very early interviews already, and Schwarber's even said, he was like, you could tell the vibe is different. We're still pissed off about the way the last season ended, but there's also like that excitement of what we can do. So, I'm like I said, I'm not in the business for moral victories. So, if you want to think that, great. But guess what? I don't want a participation trophy for losing the Super Bowl. And yeah, there are 30 other teams that would envy being in our position. Most seasons, if we don't make it to the Super Bowl, I envy that too. But when you're there, you're the favorite, and you had the game and it was there to be won, don't tell me, oh, well, it was a good season. No, it wasn't. Like, the expectation shifted. Like, it was Super Bowl victory or bust. I should be drunk right now celebrating a parade. That is the honest to God's truth. So don't tell me it was a good season, because it's not. Instead, here I am pissed off talking to you instead of being in a good mood talking to you. So take your moral victories and go somewhere with them. I don't want a participation trophy. It's all about championships. And unfortunately, in Philly, we don't have a good track record. We've lost 3 in a row. Now, to me, the episode today, we're diving right into the paint. We're already pissed off. Should have been at a parade. Should have been about a 6-pack to a 12-pack, if not more, deep right now. But instead, we're not. So we might as well just dive right in and mourn and attack it, and then turn the page on this season. And yeah, like I said, years from now, it might be like, man, that was so much fun. Because it was. To be honest, it was one of the most funs I had as a season ticket holder going to games. And that includes the whole Andy Reid era. But it was for nothing. Just like 4th and 26, so what? It was just a great play. Excuse me. So let's dive right into the paint. And I've been talking a lot, especially during the World Series, about old Philly versus new Philly. And honestly, we're still the same old Philly. I mean, and it is what it is. I'm trying to speak the new Philly into existence, but man, once I was able to dive into some of these numbers, like it's pretty bad. So I'm not sure if you saw this stat. I think I saw it first on Crossing Broad, but if you count the times the Philly sports teams were in the championship round, since 1983, they're 2-11, 2-12 if you count the Union. And I mean, I guess if you count the Union, it's a better optic for stats and whatever, but it is what it is. And we're taking college sports out of it because, to be honest, I don't recognize any of the Villanova. I shouldn't say don't recognize. Like, I recognize, yes, they won some national championships in basketball, but they don't mean shit to me. I'm a Temple guy. So what? Villanova won. The one, they won me some money in the pool. So, whatever. But, so think about that. 2-11 since 1983 in championship rounds. Now, it gets even worse. Believe it or not, the one team that everybody, especially if you have friends who are Giants or any other fans' teams that have won multiple Super Bowls, the one team that gets the most shit is the Eagles. The Eagles are the only team all time that have a winning record in the championship rounds. They're 4-3, and that's in 90 seasons as a team. They've made it to 7 championships and won 4. I mean, percentage-wise, you don't have to be a math major to know that that's not very good. But they won in 48, 49, 60, and then Super Bowl 52. Lost in 47, Super Bowl 15, and Super Bowl 39. I mean, that's not good. It gets even worse if you look at the Phillies. They're 2-6 all time in the World Series in 140 seasons. So 8 times out of 140 seasons, they've made it to the World Series. I mean, again, you don't have to be a math major to know that that's not good. And real quick, it's what? They're not even 5% of the time they're making it, or I guess it's just over 5% of the time they're making it. And then 2 out of 140, it's even worse. And sorry, I don't want to bore you with numbers, but I'm just proving the point that 1.4% of the World Series ever, or 1.4% of the Philly seasons have ended in a championship. Sixers is not quite as bad, but they're 2-4 all time. We're going to take out what they did in Syracuse because it wasn't in Philly. But that's 59 seasons, not counting this one because mathematically they will have a shot this year, but it is what it is. Flyers, they are 2-6 all time themselves, 55 seasons including this one. So that's 10 championships in 344 combined seasons. Not very good. You want to know what the bigger kick in the dick is? Listen to this. The Oakland Athletics used to play in Philly. They were in Philly for 54 years. They won 5 times. The Golden State Warriors, before they got to Golden State, they played in Philly for 16 years. 2. So 7 wins in 70 seasons for the teams that left the city. think about that. Like that's like the ultimate. Like I said, excuse me. It's like the ultimate Lucy pulling the football from Charlie Brown. So that means in Philly, we've had our fair share of losing. Yes, we're kind of in one of those stages right now between the going on the World Series run, the Super Bowl run, the MLS Cup run, if you want to include that. The fact that the Sixers are constantly in the top half of the league and they can't get past the second round, but we'll deal with that in a few weeks as we get more into putting this football season aside. But I mean, what is the worst loss then in Philly sports history? For me, it was this Super Bowl. And I know a lot of people are saying, oh, like guys that I'm on a text chain with are saying, well, I guess I'm the only Eagles fan who's not devastated by this loss. And listen, if you're not devastated, I question how big of a fan you are because, again, like maybe it's my mindset, maybe it's that participation trophy, maybe it's my age. I don't know, but I don't want to pat on the back and say, hey, guys, you had a good year. I don't think anybody in that locker room right now is feeling like, yeah, this is great. No, it hurts. It stings. Yes, you got to move on. You can't dwell on it. But it's the most painful loss I've ever been a part of. And trust me, you guys all have experienced if you're listening to it. And if you haven't, I mean, just do a Google search, painful Philly losses, and see what pops up. But I thought since we're in mourning, we're just diving right into the pain. There is no joy. We're not at a parade today. I figure, fuck it. Let's just go right in and just maybe it's a good therapy session for all of us. Maybe this is something we need. But let's go in to the most painful losses in Philly sports history. Now, you might not agree with this. You might have your own set of 5. But whatever. I'm going to give you my top 5 all-time painful losses in Philly sports history. And you know what the crazy part is? Other than the Super Bowl, I should say. Like, yes, this Super Bowl is number 1 for me. The next top 5 other than the Super Bowl I'll give you. And of those 5, I've been in attendance for 3. I'm going to talk about even feeling shittier about it. So before we go in, I'll give you some honorable mentions. You can have the whole, and I'm excited next week to talk to, my dad is going to be my guest next week. So I want to talk to him about this specific team. But the 1964 Phillies, I guess you could start with the whole Chico Ruiz stealing of home. That's what started it. But that whole collapse. I'm going to lump these ones together. Super Bowl 15, the 80 Stanley Cup Finals, the 80 NBA Finals. That year, and hopefully, it doesn't look like it because of the Flyers, but maybe the Union can take their spot. But all 4 teams, major teams, were in the finals that year, and only the Phillies won. So I'll lump those other 3 all together. The next year, the Eastern Conference Final, Game 7, the Sixers were back. They had a 3-1 lead on the Celtics. Boom. Blew it. The 87 Stanley Cup Finals, the Flyers lost in Game 7. The fucking fog ball. I talked a lot about that. We don't have to deal with the fucking fog. I'm over it. The 2000 NHL Eastern Conference Final Game 7, that was, again, the Flyers blew a 3-1 lead. Eric Lindros came back and then ended up in the fetal position after Scott Stevens knocked him out. This one is not painful for me, but I'm sure in the pantheon of Philadelphia sports, the St. Joe's Oklahoma State game back in, I think it was 2004, when St. Joe's went on that run, lost 1 game and lost in the Elite 8. Obviously, Super Bowl 39. Then you have the Eagles-Panthers NFC Championship game, the Eagles-Cardinals NFC Championship game, Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals in 2010, and obviously last year's World Series. All of them were painful in their own right. They didn't even crack my list. All right, so let's get into it. I'm feeling a little bit better already. I'm going back. Maybe it's my old Philly roots. I don't know, but talking about this is helping me get over it because it's just another in a long line. But number 5 for me was that 2019 Game 7 second round game with the Sixers against the Raptors. That was the Kawhi Leonard 4-bounce game when he hit the shot with the buzzer. Now, what some people don't remember is that game would have gone, if he missed that shot, that game would have gone into overtime. But the Raptors did go on to win the championship. Would the Sixers have beaten the Warriors? I don't know. I didn't necessarily think the Raptors were a gangbusters team. Sure, Kawhi was unstoppable. So, I don't know. The Warriors were sort of at the end, like they went on a couple year hiatus after this. Maybe the Sixers could have gotten them. I mean, the Sixers were still kind of getting together. That I don't know. Like they still would have had to beat the Bucks, but that was a year they traded for Jimmy Butler. Ben Simmons still wasn't the punk that he became, and was able to be aggressive and at least try to take a layup. Like he wasn't shooting, but at least he would shoot layups and not hide. I feel like of the whole process, this was and has been their best chance to advance and get past that second round. Maybe this year it'll be different, but that to me was painful. And yes, I know it was a second round game. I know they still had to play 2 more rounds and then the final. Like, I just don't know. I feel like this one hurt because everybody was hyped up. The Sixers were like, it was a great series. And I think a lot of experts said whoever wins this series is going to represent the East in the finals. Unfortunately, the 4-bounce shot, I'll never forget it as long as I live. It was a day we got to the Outer Banks that year, and boom, 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 done. So there's number 5. Number 4, I was in attendance for. And this was the end of, I can't even call them a dynasty because they only won once, but the end of the greatest era of Phillies history was the 2011 National League Divisional Series, Game 5. That was the Eagles, the Phillies versus the Cardinals. The Phillies lost 1-0. Chris Carpenter and Roy Halladay were dueling. Halladay gave up a run in the first inning. The offense couldn't do anything, and that was it. It was in theory it was a shitty game to watch and be at for a playoff game. I mean, unless you're a Cardinals fan and you like pitchers duels, but Ryan Howard blew out his Achilles on the last out of the game, and to me that sort of was symbolic in the fact that it symbolized to me the end of that era. The Ryan Howard was never the same player. Ruben, rightfully so, and we'll get into that another time, but everybody complains about that contract because of Howard getting hurt. If Howard didn't get hurt, I don't know if that contract looked as bad as it was. But, I mean, you had to pay. It is what, like, again, I don't want to get in, but I think the most painful thing was that team won 102 games. Like, they had Oswald, Halladay, Cliff Lee, Cole Hamels, and Joe Blanton was their pitching staff. I mean, the offense was inconsistent that year. But, I mean, you see, there was a lot of times they went on stretches where they didn't score a lot of runs. But this game in particular was extremely disappointing, not only because the expectations were so high, but because, for me, it kind of marked the end of that era. And you knew we were in for a shitty time. And they didn't get back to the playoffs until this past season. All right, number 3. And that would be the 1993 World Series Game 6. You all know it, the Joe Carter game. Watching with my boy Rob, who's listening now. What's up, brother? And it just, I still, like, I remember it happened. I'm like, it was a foul ball. There's no way that was fair. Let me see a replay. It was a foul ball. There's no way this is going to stand. Sure enough, it wasn't. But the Phillies were losing. They were losing just like they had all year. They had the big inning, took the lead in the 7th, went to it, and then they couldn't hold on to the lead, ending whatever that magical run was. This is my first taste of postseason baseball after the years of disappointment from the Buddy Ryan era. I mean, this was post Fog Bowl. This was after the Rams game, after the Washington game. They had finally beaten the Cardinals or the Saints at that point in one playoff game. But this is the first baseball playoff experience for me, and that's how it ended. And I'll still go to my grave that the bigger disappointing loss, or I shouldn't say disappointing. Game 6, Carter hitting the home run was more of a disappointment. But the loss that hurt them the most was Game 4 when they had a chance to go up or tie the series at 2 games apiece, and they gave up the 14-9 lead, and that was the rain game. And like that game, I think when they lost 15-14, that game cost them the World Series more so than any other game in that series. But the most disappointing again was the whole Joe Carter. It's starting to get real because I mean that I still like get angry about that because had they won that game, I like their chances coming back because they would have had the momentum because they had come back. That would have meant Mitch Williams would have shut them down, and I think I forget who would have been on the mound, but the way he ended up playing later in his career, it wouldn't be surprising if Schilling gave them a couple innings that game or in Game 7. So, but that was the my number 3 most painful loss in Philly sports history. Number 2 probably is not going to be on a lot of people's radar unless you're a Temple basketball fan. But due to the circumstances, that's why to me it's number 2. First of all, I was there. It was up in Buffalo. It was the 2000 NCAA tournament, second round. And this was, to me, the best team that John Chaney had as a team. Sure, the 88 team got up to number 1. And they had some good players with Macon and Vrieswick and Tim Perry and those guys. But as a team from 1 to, I guess that year he probably went 8 or 9 deep on his bench, which is not really a John Chaney thing, but he had shooters. It was Karcher, it was Wadley, Greer, Pepe, Lamont Barnes, Kevin Lott. Like they had guys. It was the best team, I think. They were the number 2 seed in the East, and that was hands down the best chance they had to go to the Final Four. Things started falling into place before this game. We were like, yeah. So we go on the court, we take on Seton Hall, and early, Shaheen Holloway goes off the court, who was Seton Hall's best player with a hurt ankle. And you never cheer anybody's injury. I'm not saying that, but you kind of got the sense like, okay, this is not – I mean, it was a close game at the half, but you kind of got the feeling after half, okay, you see this all the time in the tournament. The underdog rallies. They had the crowd behind them because everybody was rooting for Seton Hall except for us. Here we go. And they just never got over that hump. Ty Shine came off the bench, had 26 points. Game went into overtime, hit a 3 with 18 seconds left, and just it was devastating. And the fact that you just kept thinking that, okay, the run's going to come. And you see it all the time. A lot of times in the tournament when you have a big underdog, they kind of, all right, they're going to run out of gas now. They're going to run out of gas. Well, not this time. They pulled the upset off. And to make matters worse, and it was a free trip. So I don't think it was free, but it was very severely discounted because of the Owl Club donors and things like that. So I'm not knocking them. I'm forever grateful for that. But when they scheduled the flights, I don't know if it was because we obviously were expected to win. We were one of the final 4 picks. But what ended up happening is we had a later flight because they're like, oh, let's go see Niagara Falls on the way to the airport. Let's go out to dinner and do this. Nobody wanted any parts of that. We wanted to get on the plane, head back to North Broad, and just be miserable. But to me, that is the number 2 most painful loss other than the Super Bowl. And finally, number 1, I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure this one out. And up until this Super Bowl, this was hands down the most painful loss I've ever been a part of. I was in attendance for this. The Eagles-Buccaneers NFC Championship game in 2002. I mean, I've talked about this. I mean, that was, to me, other than this year, and this was the Eagles' best chance to win a Super Bowl. Of all of the Super Bowl teams they had, even the one that won, like I said, with the exception of this year, and truthfully, this team probably would have had a better shot and been a bigger favorite in the Super Bowl against the Raiders than what this team was against the Chiefs. But it was the last game at the Vet. Brian Mitchell comes down, has a big opening kickoff. Deuce Staley goes in 2 plays later, and it was all to shit after that last game at the Vet. And it's just still, to this day, it's so surreal to think back to how quiet that stadium was for being the last game. And as much of a shithole as it was, we loved that stadium. And you could have heard a pin drop. And to me, like I said, that it would have been. I would have loved to have seen this year's team play against that team. I feel like it would have been like I might plug that into the What If Sports app and just see what happens and run it 100 times and see who wins, because I think that was the better matchup. And I've talked about this on this pod, and it's one of the things I want to look into for the upcoming year. I think the Eagles were a better team as a team without T.O. because of what it did to Donovan McNabb's psyche when people started liking T.O. over him. I think this was the better team, the best team the Eagles had during that run, minus maybe the 04 team. But I think as a team, this team would have won the Super Bowl. And again, they would have been a bigger favorite against the Raiders that year had they been able to beat that. So, I don't know. Of all of the losses and the painfulness we just went through, still none of it takes the cake over this year's Super Bowl. And like I said, it's going to take a while. Thank you for listening, because I do kind of feel somewhat better. It's somewhat therapeutic to go through and know that, listen, we've developed this callous skin. This isn't the first time we've been in a position like this as a city, as a fan base. We will be back at some point. You never know when. And I think that, to me, is what stings the most. You don't know when you're going to be back, if you're going to be back. So we'll see. Like I said, the future is bright. So hopefully we kind of can build on this as a team. And I truly do think, somebody asked me the other day, and I gave the honest answer. They asked me if I thought Jalen Hurts would ever win a Super Bowl. And absolutely, he's going to win a Super Bowl. Hopefully it's with us. But I think he just has that mindset. He has that drive in him. I mean, and I still think he's got something to prove after getting benched in that national championship game when Tua came in and led them back. So I think he has that hunger to do it. I really, really hope that it's here. But we shall see. So let me know. Hit me up in the comments. Text me. Send messages. Whatever. Smoke signals. Let me know. What is your most painful loss? Did I miss something, even in the honorable mentions? Is there something that you feel is way worse? Am I full of shit? Which I can't be full of shit. This is my list. But what do you think? Do you agree? Disagree? Be sure to like and subscribe this wherever you get your podcast. Same with the YouTube channel. YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Jimbo_Mont. Instagram, Philly Jimbo. Be sure to check out every day, usually by 8 o'clock with the exception of the weekend. Sometimes I'm a little later. But this day in Philly sports history, every day for the month of February, we've been taking a look at key figures, teams, and moments in Philly sports black history. So even if you don't catch up, like you're just a new listener, go back and listen and kind of, I give you a little bit. I'm a history teacher at heart, so I give you some of that educational aspect to that. But same thing, be sure to like and subscribe that. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts, as well on YouTube. Next week, I'm super, super excited to have my dad on. We're going to talk a little Joe Frazier in honor of Black History Month, and kind of dive into why, as a local fighter, he's not necessarily as beloved as some other guys as maybe he should be. And my dad, who is one of the biggest Muhammad Ali fans I know, but born and raised in this area, I felt like he was a good person to kind of bring on. Why I have him, I'm not going to waste it. I want to get his opinion and talk about, and again, it would have been nice to talk to him fresh off of a Super Bowl win, but coming off the loss, talk to him about his most painful losses and some of his early memories, because he was 7 years old for the 1960 championship. He was right there for the 1964 collapse. He lived through the 70s and the early 80s, so we'll see. But I'm anxious to talk to him, so be sure to check that out next Thursday. And we're going to get through this. I'm trying my hardest. We're changing the narrative. We need to get new Philly, but losses like this make it fucking tough, man. So go. My condolences to you. We'll get through this together. It's time to turn the page. Let's focus on those coordinators. Start looking ahead to the draft. Spring training has started. So we got the Phillies. Let's go defend that crown and actually win one this year. But have yourselves a week. Be safe on President's Day. I don't know what people still do, whether you go skiing, go out partying. I have 2 kids now, so we're going to have well visits on President's Day. So we're not doing too much. We're going to get a little crazy. But have yourselves a week, and until next time, I will see you when I see you.